Get your ears wrapped around the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast. All the scoop you need to know from college basketball to the NBA and even March Madness. News of your rising stars. Topics on and off the hardwood. This is the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast.
Welcome into the GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Brice Lewis, back with another basketball show, talking about all things basketball. And this is a very special show today. By the time this goes live, the NBA would have already restarted. But while this is being recorded, the NBA is officially back, guys. The NBA has officially returned Thursday. The two games on the slate have initially started the back to NBA schedule. The restart is here. We get to see our game that we love of basketball, and we get to enjoy it and embrace it and use it to help us distract us from what's going on in the world today. Very exciting time for basketball fans. Very, very exciting time for basketball fans. I'm excited. A lot of people are excited. So it's a great time. All right. And really, for me, I think one of the most important things is just really appreciating, what the NBA has done to get them back into this position, to give the players the abilities to even have the game, the stuff that they had to talk about, negotiate, sacrifice to even have this. I mean, if you didn't know, NBA, I think weekly releases their weekly, in terms of tests in terms of the players and who's positive. And for a second week in a row, there has been no players who have tested positive for COVID-19 since entering the bubble. So far, again, the bubble is working, and that's obviously great news for a basketball fan as the season now has undergone. And if we can keep this up, obviously they'll look at this as a success and say, okay, we had success with the bubble, and now when next season comes around, we know the bubble works. Now we just got to still make some kinks here and there to accommodate all 30 teams and to accommodate a full season, and we'll go from there. So we'll have to see. Obviously, the two games, like I said, by the time this goes live, the games will have already been played. But again, we're going to do something where when I talk about these games and preview these games, we'll see if I end up, in terms of predictions, am I right? Am I correct in my predictions? So obviously, I guess this segment could be sort of kind of because it's like, well, the game's already been played, but just maybe hearing what I thought about the game going into it will intrigue you a little bit. And obviously, this show, we're going to keep it where we're just going to review, for the most part, the games through Friday and Saturday as well. So we're going to talk about that. So obviously, those games we'll be able to see more in-depth, non-played games by the time this goes live, and we'll also talk about NBA news here and there. So we're going to jump right into it with our first game of the restart at 6:30, the Pelicans and the Utah Jazz. Obviously, two teams. Jazz currently the 4th seed in the Western Conference, firmly in the playoffs. The Pelicans trying to battle to stay in the 9th spot to then get a play-in game against Memphis, or get them way up to the 8th spot and then have to play the 9th seed to get into the playoffs. Obviously, they're battling 5 other teams. A lot of people feel like their real competition is really Portland. So we'll have to see how that goes. Obviously, if they're somehow ended up with a tie, they would do 2 play-in games where they would basically do a play-in between the 2 and the 9th, the tied 9th place seed, and then the 8th and the 9th seed, and then playoffs. So that's how it's looking. That's where it's going right now. So there you go. So obviously, this game, you have two teams who are trying to make a statement. I think opening night is they like to say opening night of any season is more of a statement, more of a you could use this as a game where it's like, yeah, we're here, but also could be one of the most fraudulent games also, because you could see a team who maybe was never predicted to be that great dominate a team that was expected to be better, and then when the season plays out, everything kind of goes back to order with the team that you thought was going to be good is good. The team that you thought wasn't going to be good isn't as good. It happens all the time, especially with NBA. It's 82 games. You can start off 5-0 and still finish with 20 wins. It's possible. The Hawks started 3-0 this year, and they only won, I think, 21 games. So clearly, that doesn't necessarily mean anything. But in the restart, obviously, since these games automatically have so much meaning from the beginning, I think you can make the argument that it means a lot from the get-go. Both teams, obviously have two different journeys. If we're talking about the Utah Jazz, obviously Utah, the COVID situation, the NBA shutdown, everything that happened revolved all around what happened in Utah with Rudy Gobert and Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, we know about that situation. We know how it's affected some relationships within the Utah locker room. We know how it's affected, the game. The NBA season was canceled that night that happened when Rudy Gobert tested positive for COVID-19. And, for the most part, it's kind of one of those things where it's something that really shift the NBA. Just knowing the Utah Jazz were at the center of it. And now they're back. And listen, they're still a fourth spot in the West, so they're still a top half team in the Western Conference. But obviously the biggest thing with them is, are they serious? Are they a team that you could legitimately say could compete for a championship? Mike Conley has disappointed this year. I think everybody knows that. He hasn't played up to the expectation they thought. Donovan Mitchell's still been the star he's always been. Obviously, they brought in Mike Conley to take the pressure off Donovan Mitchell having to do everything. They lost Bojan Bogdanovic. And obviously that means Joe Ingles had to step in for him. One thing that, Coach Dan Snyder has said about this restart is he really took the time to go back and look at things that they weren't good at. And I think this is what a lot of coaches should do in a situation like this. You have all this time before you play a game. What were the flaws of your team? And then try to figure out scheme ways to figure it out. And the thing about it is you have multitudes of time. It's not like, we have an issue, we got to fix it throughout the season. It's like you actually have months to really come together with a good detailed plan and then fix whatever issue that your team has. So obviously he's expecting Utah to come out tonight and fix some of the issues they've had and play better. And then you got the Pelicans who, like I said, they're battling for a spot. They have such a promising core of players with Lonzo, who's improved, Ingram, who's improved, Zion, who looks like a star, Drew Holiday, one of the best two-way players. It just, Ingram, most improved player. JJ Redick, great veteran. It's like there seems like there's so much potential with Utah. And I'm not Utah, but the Pelicans. And you can maybe even say, are one of the most intriguing teams and one of the most intriguing watches in the league because of that. Because they have done a lot. They have came up. They have, been through the ringer. And now they're here in this situation with a chance to make the playoffs and a chance for Zion to show, what his stuff and everything like that. There's a lot that can happen here. And in this game, I think it'll be a competitive game. Obviously, I always say about the restart, we don't know where teams are. Some teams may be further ahead than others in terms of their chemistry, where they are, stuff like that. If I make a prediction on tonight's game, I'll probably go with I'm going to go with the Pelicans just because I know, like I said, since they're starting it where they're starting it, they have to win. Honestly, starting off with a loss won't help them. Because they're trying to stay within 4 games of Memphis to stay in the running for that play-in game. So, clearly, if that's the case, I think I think they're obviously in a more desperate situation where, again, Utah really is just trying to play themselves where they want to be. They still have something to play for, which is just playing at the level they know they can play at because they haven't played in so long, or as long since they've only had 3 scrimmage games, and trying to play at a level that will get them to where they want to go. But I'm going to go with the Pelicans tonight. And then the second back-to-back tonight, they have the 2 LA teams, the Clippers and the Lakers, playing. This is a tale of 2 teams. The Clippers right now don't have Lou. Montrez, I think Pat might play. I think Pat's playing tonight. They're not going to have some players. They still have Kawhi and Paul George, though. There are obviously a lot of expectations for them to still be in the championship picture, but there are a lot of questions as well because of the fact that they've had a very inconsistent lineup. Players have, all of that, load management stuff. They load managed, never thinking the season was going to stop. Now you did all that load managing. Then you had to take 4 to 5 months off. Now you got to play again. You can't load manage at this point. And then at the same time, now you're having issues in the bubble where people are having to leave. Lou Williams out here making mistakes, getting some Magic City wings, which I will try one day because they heard I was bussing. But Magic City wings, and he's not going to play. And it's just like, is it a possibility that the Clippers will never have that true chemistry that they need to be able to win a championship? Because teams that win championships have chemistry. By the time, because obviously you play a whole 82 games and you get to the playoffs, and your chemistry is probably going to be as good as it's going to be. They've never really had that the entire season. And now they're coming back after a 5-month layoff, 4-month layoff, and saying, okay, now we got to get it going now. But then you still don't even have everybody yet. So now the question is, well, are y'all actually all going to get it together now? That's kind of a big thing. That's kind of a big thing for me. And so we're going to have to see about that, if they can get it together, if they can really put it together, in my opinion. And on the Lakers side, outside of Avery Bradley, which I think could be a big concern because he was their best perimeter defender. JR can play defense. Dion Waiters was never mentioned known as a defender. They got scores, so in terms of scoring, they're maybe in a better position. Because obviously Dion Waiters could create his own shot off the dribble, and JR could get lighted up and get hot. But perimeter defense could be an issue, so we'll have to see how that goes throughout this restart. Because if they're struggling on the perimeter, obviously a lot of people are going to think about Avery Bradley, opting out the season, thinking, dang, you can see the hole he's left in the team, how it's not the same, how him not playing is affecting them on the defensive end, and seeing how that was all put together. But they still have LeBron James and Anthony Davis. They're still going to go out there and compete at a high level. They're still going to go out there and play the game the best way they know how, and they're going to do what they got to do out there. So I think for the most part, I don't think there's nothing that we need to worry about in terms of the entire play of the team. Because they're still, like I said, at the end of the day, both of these teams still have their main stars, but it's just the depth in the pieces that made the team work and so successful during the season. Each team is missing one or two of those pieces. So will that affect the overall team and the overall product of both teams in this situation? Listen, the season series is 2-1 Clippers. I think a lot of people are thinking that the Lakers are going to go ahead and win tonight. I'm going to go ahead and say the Lakers are going to win tonight as well and tie the series up 2-2. So, and then obviously we're going to hope that they meet in the Western Conference Finals potentially and settle that in that realm where obviously by that point you would think, oh, okay, I have no COVID, no injuries. And obviously, like I said, outside of Avery Bradley not being there, both teams are healthy, both teams are ready to go, and both teams are ready to play. So we're going to have to see how it all turns out. We'll have to see how it all works. So we're going to have to stay tuned for that. But coming up next here on the GSMC Basketball Podcast, we're going to continue with our basketball preview and predictions of the games. We just talked about the Thursday start-off doubleheader. Now we're going to get into the Friday games in my preview and prediction of each game and all that. So stay tuned right here on the podcast.
Are you looking for the very best NFL and college football podcast? Then check out the GSMC Football Podcast. Get the latest football news both on and off the field. From the NFL Draft to trades to the rumor mill to the NFL Combines. They got you covered. That's GSMCpodcast.com/football-podcast. Get updates on college rivalries, game day insights, and much, much more. It's football talk the way you want it. This show eats, sleeps, and breathes football. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we broke down the two opening day games for the NBA season. And we will continue on with that in this segment, breaking down the 6 that are going to be on Saturday's slate. Obviously, just a reminder here, if you want to support the podcast, please don't forget to follow us on social media. Do not forget to follow us on social media. We have Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. I would think preferably would actually want you to use probably Twitter, as that's usually the most interactive app, I'm sure. If you want to follow us, our @ is GSMC_basketball. Yes, sir. GSMC_basketball. So, if you want to interact with us there and follow us on Twitter, please follow us at GSMC_basketball. But now we're going to get to the slate of games and talk about all 6 of them and break them down right here on the podcast. So the first game on the slate that will kick off Saturday at 2:30 are the Orlando Magic and the Brooklyn Nets. The 7th and 8th seed in the Eastern Conference kicking it off. Not what some people would say the most exciting game in the world, but a game nonetheless. Obviously, we know the situation of both teams. Both teams are currently in the playoffs right now. And right now, since the Wizards are 5.5 games out, none of them are in danger of losing their spot. If anything, they could just flip-flop from 7 to 8. So it's basically who's going to play the Bucks first. Which team wants to play them the least, almost. You can almost say that's the type of game this is going to be. But, obviously both teams are coming into this game trying to, do what they can, trying to compete at the high level. Orlando is coming to this game probably with with their full roster for the most part. Brooklyn, obviously, we know they've lost their top 6 guys. I mean, if I had to make a prediction on this game, I'd probably go Magic here. Because I think even though they're both the lowly teams of the Eastern Conference playoffs right now, the Magic are still the better team. If Brooklyn was, if they could have Kyrie or KD, or even if they had Spencer Dinwiddie and other guys outside of, I would maybe go with Brooklyn here. But in this situation, I'm going to go with Orlando. I think Orlando's just the better. It's just that they're more healthy. They have most of their players, and they have more talent than Brooklyn. I think it would be pretty hard to dispute that kind of case, in my opinion, about who is that. So we'll have to see, how it goes. I'm sure, like I said, a lot of people are sitting here like, oh yeah, I can't wait to watch the Magic and Nets, but sometimes the games that you don't pay attention to be sometimes the most exciting ones to watch. So definitely, if you love basketball, you should watch it anyway, just to see basketball being played. The next game on the slate at 4 o'clock tomorrow, Suns and Wizards. Obviously, the Suns trying to fight to get into that ninth spot positioning. Devin Booker, DeAndre Ayton here in good old Orlando, Florida, trying to ball out so they can get to that position. The Washington Wizards, obviously without Bradley Beal, Bortons, or John Wall, but still here competing, still having a chance to even crack the playoff seeding. So, clearly, they have something to play for. even if we think it's unrealistic that they can do it, they have something to play for. And I'm sure they're going to come out there, they're going to try to play their best game. They're going to try to come out there and compete at a high level. You know, as they should. Both teams are going to come out there and see what they can do. If I had to give a prediction in this game, I think I'm going to go with the Suns. I think the Suns are just the better team. Honestly, during the scrimmages, the Suns played pretty well. Like they played as well as they possibly can. And listen, in this game, there's only really one official star on the court, and that's Devin Booker. And obviously that means they have the best player on the floor, Phoenix does. So if Devin Booker takes over a game, you would think that would probably lead to the Suns getting a victory. So if Devin Booker has one of his big games today, or his big games on Friday, I don't see any reason why they wouldn't be able to pick up the win against the Washington Wizards, who, like I said, they're gonna scrap and they're gonna claw. I think the Wizards are gonna be that team. Don't have the most talent, but they're gonna fight and claw and compete at a high level and do what they possibly can to get a win and try to stay in it. Because literally, listen, I think I think the Magic are the 8th spot right now. If the Magic lose and the Wizards win, they're within 4.5, and now it's like, okay, they legitimately have a chance to get into the playoffs. So, like I said, the Wizards have something they're playing for, so don't think they're just going to roll over and just do whatever. They're going to come out there, they're going to compete, and they're going to play. As they should. In the next game, on the slate, we have the Grizzlies and the Trailblazers. Obviously, this could be a potential preview of a future NBA play-in game for the 8th spot between the Grizzlies and Trailblazers. Obviously, Grizzlies need this to keep and widen their lead, especially if the Pelicans do go down to the Utah Jazz. If they beat the Portland Trailblazers, they gave themselves an extra game up on both teams. But if the Pelicans win and then Portland loses, they're losing ground, and now it's a little bit tighter. Because remember, the Pelicans and the Blazers are already within the required games to be in that play-in game. At this point, like I said, Memphis is just trying to hold on, and honestly, they probably would prefer to get the above 4-game lead, so that way they don't have to play a play-in game, and that way they can go ahead and get the win. Where obviously Portland's trying their best to get into that spot. Like I said, you can almost maybe even call this a new look Portland team, maybe. You can maybe call them that, but there's a lot here. It's going to be good to see Damian Lillard, CJ McCollum, Nurkic, Zach Collins, Whiteside, all of them on the floor together, seeing how it works. It's going to be exciting seeing John Morant, seeing him, how he's been, throughout this time. He's put on some muscle. Dylan Brooks, Jalen Jackson Jr., all of them coming back, trying to compete, trying to play, trying to hold on. I mean, listen, they're a young team in a position where they're having to hold on to a playoff spot. That's a lot to ask of a young team. Like, you got to, every game, like I said, every game matters. Every game you're playing hard. You can't just take a game off and just kind of be like, okay, I'm not gonna give it my all, because you have to. Because teams are gunning you down and they're chasing you. So you need to go out there and you need to compete and you need to play as hard and as well as you can if you're going to keep that overall. Next game on the list of games, and also my prediction for that game is I'm going to go with Portland in that game to pick up the win in their opening game. And the next game, Celtics and Bucks, obviously primetime game, big clash game. Potential Eastern Conference Finals preview. Celtics, the dark horse team to potentially win the NBA Finals and get to the NBA Finals out of the Eastern Conference, going against the prohibitive favorites, the Milwaukee Bucks, the most dominant team in basketball through statistics and through numbers. So, obviously, the battle of the green teams, I like to say, the greenies. So, it's going to be a good game. I think this is obviously the best game on slate tomorrow. Big clash, like I said, national televised game, 6:30. It's going to be really hard to really make a decision who thinks to win this game. I think both teams are capable of winning. The key to Boston, I've said, is Kemba Walker. If Kemba Walker can't beat Kemba Walker, then I think Milwaukee's going to probably get out of the East. But at the same time, even in this game, if Kemba Walker doesn't play a lot, I mean, unless Tatum has a monster game and Jaylen Brown has a really good game behind that and Gordon Hayward steps up, because listen, that's the thing about the Celtics, they have depth in scoring. So even if Kemba isn't great, they have depth scoring-wise, but the thing is, it's not going to happen every night. So if Kemba's consistently not scoring, and then one of them don't have one of the good games, you would think that would lead to more of a loss for the Celtics, where Milwaukee, like I said, Giannis is going to be Giannis. It's going to be more about the rest of the team, his teammates, keeping up their play. The Milwaukee Bucks want to prove that they're the dominant team in the Eastern Conference. But I'm going to go with the Milwaukee Bucks in this game to win their opening game back and defeat the Boston Celtics. So that's my prediction there. Next game, Kings and Spurs at 8 o'clock. Obviously, two teams fighting to try to get up the standings, to get within 4 games of the Memphis Grizzlies. Spurs and Kings, obviously Greg Popovich coaching. Listen, Spurs, we know what they are. They're going to be well coached, and they're going to try their butts off. You know Greg Popovich is not going to expect anything less than that. Even for the lack of talent, they have to be accommodating. But also the Kings are coming back after, they have a lot of young guys. De'Aaron Fox, Buddy Hield, guys like that they like, that they want to be able to come back and play well. And I think that's going to be big, This game, again, obviously you look at it on paper, it's not a game that's going to get you out your seat and make you say, oh, snap, I got to watch this game. But at the same time, you don't want to disrespect these teams because they're going out here competing at a high level and playing this game for you, the fan. So they're gonna go out there, they're gonna do what they can do, and they're gonna play. If I had to give a prediction in this game, I'll probably go with the Kings in this game. I think Buddy Hield. I have a feeling Buddy Hield's gonna have a big game in the opening game. I think he's gonna play really well. So I think that's what we're gonna go with here. And this is a game, like I said, it's not gonna go on paper as exciting, but could be a good game to keep an eye on and watch and everything. So don't sleep on it. Don't, just basically keep your eyes open. Don't rule it out. These guys are going to try their best. They're fighting for something. Every team is fighting for something. So they're going to be playing at a high level out the gate. And then the last game on the slate tomorrow, Rockets and Mavericks. Obviously, this could be a very high-scoring game, the second of the primetime games. James Harden, Russell Westbrook versus Luka Doncic and Kristaps Porzingis. Small ball versus the young guns of the Mavericks. It'll be interesting to see this contrasting styles. Obviously, again, we got to see where everybody is, but I expect this to be a very up and down, high-scoring game, as you would expect from these two teams in the way that they're designed and the way that they're built. You expect them to come out there and compete and play at a high level, and that's what I think you're going to get from them. Obviously, I don't think there's going to be a lot of defense played necessarily, but I definitely think both teams are going to come out there and play at a high level and try their best to go pick up the win for their respective teams. Obviously, both teams are very firmly in the playoffs, so this may be the one game on the slate that you can maybe say there isn't necessarily a lot to play for outside of just getting your rhythm back, getting the flow back, and just starting to restart on a good note with a W. So I think that may be an argument you can make. If I had to make a prediction in this game, I will probably go with I'm going to go with the Dallas Mavericks to upset the Houston Rockets in this game. I think Luka is going to come back with a vengeance. I think he's going to play well. I think Dallas is going to have a really good game in their first game back. Like I said, offense is not something that has to be necessarily coached to me. If you could score, you could score any second, any minute. And obviously the Houston, like Russell got there late, James got there late. Don't know where the chemistry is. You got to see, even though they have you can maybe say the most talent on the piece of paper, they all haven't played together that long within the bubble. So we don't know where they are as a team. So I'm going to go with the team that's been around, and that's the Dallas Mavericks. But stay tuned as we're going to go talk about and preview the Saturday games right here on the podcast.
Check out the show that's built on the MMA, from the UFC to extreme cage fighting. They got the fights covered. Check out the GSMC MMA podcast. Get the latest news on past or upcoming fights. Join us as we talk to and about some of the biggest names in the MMA, past, present, and future. When it's the fight game, there's just one show to check out. GSMCpodcast.com/MMA-podcast. Don't forget to like them on Facebook and follow them on Twitter. Visit GSMCpodcast.com for more info.
Welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we broke down the Friday games and gave my predictions on the games. So obviously, like I said, the NBA is back. The NBA restart is here. So you know we got to break down all the action around the association. Because obviously that's always the most exciting part of this entire thing. Just breaking down what's going on. Breaking down and talking basketball. It's just, it's a great thing. It really is. It's a fantastic thing. It's something that we do enjoy, we love, and we really appreciate on top of it. So, you know, we're going to continue on with breaking down games, like I said. But I do want to get into a story right before we get into the breaking down of games. Just a quick story, and this is an idea that I've actually pitched before on this podcast, not in this wording, but I've always kind of been like, you know, if they bring back the NBA season, you can't put all 30 teams in one place. You got to have multiple locations, and so there's a report that the NBA is reportedly considering games in regional pods for the 2020-2021 season. Article by Paul Kaspanian of Bleacher Report, and I quote: "The NBA created a campus at Walt Disney World in Orlando, Florida to house 22 teams and restart the 2019-2020 season amid the COVID-19 pandemic. But it has already began planning for the 2020-21 season as well. With that in mind, regional pods for at least some portion of the NBA's next campaign appear to be on the table. According to Adrian Wojnarowski, and I quote, "The NBA's priority remains to get fans into arenas next season. Woj originally tweeted Wednesday, regional pods for extended periods are among brainstorms, but preference would be that those are finite in length. For example, a month or two. A month inside, a month out. Early in planning, everything's on the table." On Tuesday, the National Basketball Players Association Executive Director Michelle Roberts told ESPN Tim Bonsos that the league may be forced to play in de facto bubble next year. "If tomorrow looks like today, I don't know we can say we can do it differently." A total of 61,000 new cases were confirmed in the United States on Tuesday, per the World Health Organization, bringing the country's total to over 4.26 million. The league has not yet set an official start date for the 2020-2021 season, although an NBA.com FAQ frequently asked questions about the NBA nights that the season restarts list at December 1st as the day when the new campaign will likely begin. If that's the case, the league would need to be ready for an alternate plan of any kind, per James Gallagher of the BBC News. Most experts think the coronavirus vaccine is likely to become widely available by mid-2020-21. The Disney World bubble appears to be working well so far, with none of the 344 players tested on the campus having a confirmed case since July 20th. However, the bubble is a temporary fix for a long-term problem. Eight of the league's teams weren't invited to Disney World due to their placement in the standings, with the regular season dwindling down. The 6 teams will depart in mid-August after they're eliminated from playoff contention. From there, the group of teams in Disney World will be gradually cut in half through the remainder of the summer and the beginning of fall as playoffs progress. In other words, the feasible of current bubble pales in comparison to holding 30 teams in one location for a far longer period of time that brings regional pods into equation, which are more likely more doable. Hypothetically, the NBA could group teams by divisions or in 5 or 6 groups for even numbers and have them play out their regular season series to start the year to buy time. The league could either house teams in one set location, a la the current Disney World bubble, or something akin to what the NHL is doing, holding all its games in Edmonton or Toronto, or break the teams down by region to restrict long-distance traveling. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear like the NBA or any American sports league will be ready to welcome fans back anytime soon as the pandemic continues to spread, but the current success of the Disney World bubble creates hope that the league will figure out a contingency plan for the 2020-2021 season. So there you go. Obviously, as you can tell, things are being talked about, things are being discussed, things are being figured out, and this will continue to be the process moving forward going on to the future. So that was just the update there, and now we're going to go ahead and get back into the games. Saturday, kicking off Saturday's slate. A good game starting. Heat and Nuggets. Jimmy Butler and the Miami Heat versus the Joker and the Denver Nuggets. Obviously, this looks like a pretty good game. You know, both teams are going to come out there and compete at a high level. Both teams are going to try to play at a high level. You know, the Heat obviously are the team that some people even still look at as a trendy dark horse pick potentially. Like I said, a very trendy dark horse pick. And the Nuggets are a team that I kind of think, with Bobo in the picture and Michael Porter Jr. gets himself ready, they have two players who have star potential who could, if they play a big role in the rotation, could make some things happen and make some things shake for the Denver Nuggets and make them maybe a harder out or a more competitive team down the line. So obviously, if that's the case, then obviously they're going to be a tough team to beat with the talent they already had assembled. Obviously, if you look at the situation, if you look at both teams, if I had to pick a winner in this game, I think I'm going to go with the Miami Heat. I think Miami Heat going to pick up a good win. I think they're going to pick up a good W. I think they're going to play well. I think they're going to do what they got to do. And they're going to take care of business. And one thing about the scrimmage games is that I don't feel like Jimmy Butler played a ton. But the younger guys like Tyler Hero and Kendrick Nunn and those guys, they were able to really get their legs back and play a lot, so they'll be ready to go. We'll have to see where Jimmy and Bam are at that moment, but I think that would be a pretty good game and a good matchup to continue to look on to the future. The next game at 3:30, another good game. And this will be Utah's second game. Is Utah versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. This will be Oklahoma City's opening game. So, obviously, you know, Oklahoma City, Utah, firmly in the playoffs. I believe Oklahoma is the current 7th seed, I believe. They're good. I mean, listen, they're a team, Chris Paul and those boys, trying to compete at the highest level against a Utah team who, like I said, could be coming into the game riding momentum if they beat the Pelicans. Having that good start, already having their legs back under them after a game. You know, the Thunder just hitting the floor. We don't know, maybe that could be an advantage or not. It's definitely something that's going to, you know, be interesting to keep an eye on, this matchup. A good game, like I said, 2 good games really to start the state. Honestly, Saturday in general has a lot of good games, but obviously that's another good game you could watch. If I had to make a pick in the game of who I think would come out with victory, I think I'm gonna go with the. I'm gonna go with the Utah Jazz just because I don't want to go against them twice. Cause I'm basically feeling like they're gonna lose every game if I did that. So I will go with Utah in this game to pick up the win. So they could be kind of get 1-1, or they could be 2-0 when this game is over with the Oklahoma City Thunder. But I definitely think Oklahoma City Thunder are a team to definitely keep an eye on during this bubble restart. To see how those young guys play now after having all these months off and see where they are in terms of their basketball shape and acumen. Next game, big game, Pelicans and Clippers. Pelicans back on primetime television, Zion Williamson versus Kawhi Leonard. Clippers, obviously, trying to bounce back. Both teams could come into this game with one loss. Both of these teams could come into the game with one W. One team could have a loss. One team could have a win. Obviously, if you're the Pelicans, if you lose the game to the Jazz, this isn't the best second game to have. Especially if the Clippers did come off a loss. Like, you were in it, now you're in a loss to, and then depending on what happens with Memphis in their games, you could be down to as well. Obviously, that wouldn't be very ideal, but if I had to make a selection in this game, I'm probably going to go with the Clippers here to pick up the win over the New Orleans Pelicans. So, obviously, I think that, the Clippers are going to get themselves back to where they need to be. I think they'll have probably more of their roster back. I know Lou Williams will be back, but I think they'll have more of their roster back, and they'll be in a better place at the end of the day. And then in the next game, the 76ers and Pacers. The 76ers, obviously, come into this game. They're going to try out something new. They're putting Ben Simmons at the 4, Shake Milton at point. That's going to be a very interesting lineup and game to watch. The Pacers are a good team. With Oladipo actually playing in this restart, definitely a tough team. This is going to be a very good test for the 76ers to see where they are. If they could come out and win this game, and let's say that lineup works well together, maybe the 76ers have found them something that could benefit them in the playoffs moving forward and benefit them long term, potentially. Obviously, the Pacers coming into this game, trying to just, like I said, both teams firmly in the playoffs. Pelicans just trying to, not the Pelicans, but the Pacers just trying to win, play well, be at a good level, be where they need to be, and do what they got to do. Like I said, Oladipo back. We get to see Pacers basically at full strength, even though Sabonis ain't playing, so obviously that's a big loss. But it sounds like based off the injury, he might be out for the rest of their season. So, we'll have to see how they do without him. But if I had to make a prediction in this game, I think I'm going to go with the 76ers to pick up the W. I think the 76ers will handle this game. Like I said, it honestly just depends on the chemistry and everything that happens if they play well together. If they do, I think they're going to pick up the win. If they don't, then obviously I don't think they will pick up the win in that situation. And then, last game on the Saturday slate, Lakers and Raptors. Obviously, LeBron James coming to this game, going against the baby Raptors, who he's always dominated throughout his career. The Raptors, obviously, these aren't your old Raptors. These are the Nick Nurse Raptors, the defending NBA champions. I'm sure it's, the defending NBA champions are ready to defend their championship. So, obviously, they're going to come into this game ready to go, ready to play, ready to do what they got to do to be able to win. They're going to play good defense. They're going to play good team basketball. Siakam, is going to get a chance against the big time against LeBron James to play well. Like I said, both teams firmly in the playoffs. Lakers obviously clinching the 1 seed. Raptors top 3. And healthy. As they actually haven't been healthy all season long. They're healthy now. Like most teams are at this point now since the restart happened. So obviously it's going to be very exciting to see what happens. If I pick a victory in this game, I actually might go with the upset here and go with the Raptors to beat the LA Lakers in this game. So I think the defending champs will actually start off with a good solid W against a top game Lakers team. So I think that's going to be very cool, very interesting, and very interesting to watch when the game comes along. But coming up next, right here at the GSMC Basketball Podcast, stay tuned if you want to listen to more basketball talk, as we're going to get into more of a basketball news segment on things happening around the league, protocols, and etc. So stay tuned right here on the podcast.
Check out the show built around the women of MMA. From the UFC to the extreme cage fighting, we got the fights covered.
Listen.
It's the Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast. The latest news of upcoming fights, discussions of previous matches. Join us as we talk to and about the biggest names in women's mixed martial arts, past, present, and future. When it's the women's fight game, you know where to listen to. The Golden State Media Concepts Women's MMA Podcast.
welcome back to the GSMC Basketball Podcast. Last segment, we broke down the Saturday slate of basketball games and gave my predictions on all the games. So, obviously, very exciting time that basketball is back. Very exciting time to have it back on this, a lot of stuff happening in the world today. So it's just really good to know that we have the game that we love back in our possession and we can enjoy it again and really embrace the basketball that is the NBA. So that's really, really cool to see and everything. But now we're going to get into this segment and be more news-centric. Talk about things happening around the association, different stories and stuff like that. So we're going to go ahead, kick it off, and get right into it. Anonymous Bulls player. This is an article in Bleacher Report. Anonymous Bulls player. Growing concern. Management isn't listening to players. Rod Goldberg of Bleacher Report. And I quote, "The Chicago Bulls revamped their front office, but there are still issues within the organization, according to Joe Crawley of the Chicago Sun-Times. One Bull told Chicago Sun-Times on Wednesday that the growing concern is that no player is really being listened to by the organization. It's a diversion from the player's first mindset general manager Mark Eversley pushed when he was introduced in May. Many of the problems reportedly stem from the presence of head coach Jim Boylen, who remains in charge despite player complaints to new executive vice president of basketball operations, Aroris Kavarnaris. Several players have gone public with complaints about the coach, including Denzel Valentine and Daniel Goffard. And I quote, "I don't like him a lot, but he's okay," Goffard said of Boylen on a Twitch stream via Jeremy Layton of the New York Post. "Got some things he can work on, got some things he can get better at as a person and as a coach. There hasn't been much success on the court either, as Boylen is just 39 and 84 in parts of 2 seasons with the Chicago Bulls. Even with the problems, the Bulls appear ready to let the coach get another chance in 2020-2021. There are certainly more and more signs that it's not going to be surprising if Jim Boylen is brought back, or at least giving an extended dress rehearsal," K.C. Johnson of NBC Sports said. "Zach LaVine is tired of losing and tired of a lot of things. The situation has created plenty of problems within the locker room." So obviously, as you can tell, this has been an ongoing saga within the Chicago Bulls organization. This kind of reminds me of the Jets, where a lot of players don't like Adam Gase. A lot of players don't like Jim Boylen. Openly don't like Jim Boylen. And if that's the case, that's a pretty big deal. If your players are basically telling the entire world we're not behind him. And that should be a big red flag. It should be a huge red flag. And so we have to see, how things go. But obviously this is an issue I think you don't want lingering too long. Because I just think you don't want those issues. You don't want those problems. You shouldn't want them, at least, in my opinion. And so if the front office is smart, they need to handle this situation. Because if you have more players come out in disapproval or in a point of being unhappy with Jim Boylan as the head coach, that could very leave a negative stain on the front office of the Chicago Bulls with such a revamp, and then the players have been complaining, we don't like our head coach, but nothing has been changing and nothing has been happening. So you clearly don't want that lingering around, and so you probably, if you're the NBA, or not NBA, but the Chicago Bulls front office and executives, need to get on that and handle it before it gets too out of hand. And our next story, NBAPA's Michelle Roberts says the NBA might need to use a bubble for the 2020-2021 season. And I quote an article by Blake Schuster. The NBA might need to get used to playing inside of a bubble for a time being, not just for the rest of this season, but potentially the start of next too. In an interview with ESPN's Tim Bontemps, National Basketball Players Association Executive Director Michelle Roberts said returning to a secure environment may be the league's best path moving forward for 2020-2021. If tomorrow looks like today, I don't know how we can say we can do it differently, Roberts said. If tomorrow looks like today, and today we all acknowledge, and this is not Michelle talking, this is the league together with the PA and our respective experts saying this is the way to do it, then that's going to have to be the way to do it. The NBA's bubble site at ESPN Worldwide Sports Complex at Disney World in Orlando, Florida, has so far remained free of new positive COVID-19 results. On July 21st, the NBA reported 0 cases of the coronavirus following the testing of 346 players. And the league has gone 3 weeks without a positive result, which is great news. While teams have been practicing and holding scrimmages against each other, games are slated, obviously, to begin on opening night with the doubleheader featuring the Utah Jazz against the New Orleans Pelicans and the Los Angeles Lakers versus the Los Angeles Clippers. Each of the 22 teams inside the bubble will play 8 regular season games to finalize the playoff seeding, at which point the 6 eliminated teams will head home. In theory, the bubble will grow smaller and easier to contain clubs that are eliminated after each round. In theory, the bubble will grow well, actually, I just read that. A bubble for the 2020-2021 season, however, presents an even bigger ask. The NBA would need to find a way to accommodate all 30 teams for an 82-game season. More teams equals more risk, as does a longer season. Yet Michelle Roberts is preparing for the possibility that the league will need to work around those risks. And I quote, this is what she said. I'm not in the Trump camp in believing it's all going to go away in 2 weeks. But I'm praying that there will be different set of circumstances that will allow us to play in a different way. But because I don't know, all I know is what I know now. So it may be that if the bubble is the way to play, then that's likely going to be the way we play next season if things remain as they are. I hope not, because I'd like to think that people can live with their families, but I can only comment on what I know and what I know is right now. Some of the NBA and union top decision makers have already begun addressing these concerns. The league and the union also have begun preparing for negotiations about how to take care of what will most likely be a steer drop in revenue next season because of the ongoing pandemic, which will make it difficult to play both a full-time schedule and, more importantly, play games in front of paying fans. In a call with players back in May, NBA Commissioner Adam Silver said money generated from live game attendance could account for up to 40% of the league's annual revenue. Roberts said two sides are beginning some very high-level discussions with respect to what the potential issues are, and said the laborious process that was necessary for the NBA and the union to hash out how to put the bubble together and then actually go through the process of doing so took them just about all the oxygen out of the room. The NBA will have a bit more time than usual to prepare for next season. Training camps are scheduled to begin November 10th, with the season tipping off in early December. So clearly, a lot of questions. A lot of decisions have to be made. So we'll have to see how it all works out. Hopefully they can find a formula and a plan that works for everyone, and that way everybody can be on the same page, which is, I'm sure, preferably what they would like to actually have happen, which is everybody being on the same page. Now we're going to get to this last story before we get out of here. NBA players who make their debut in the bubble reportedly eligible for the 2020-2021 Rookie of the Year award. Players who make NBA regular season debuts during the 2019-2020 season restart will still yet be eligible for the 2020-2021 Rookie of the Year. He also explained the rationale behind the decision. ESPN's Tim Bontemps. The thinking behind the ruling was that since seeding games won't count for this year's awards, there is no reason to penalize players from having a chance to win something next year. That news comes off the great performances and the scrimmages by rookie big man Bobo, a second-round draft pick in 2019. Bobo has not played any regular season games to date. He split time in this season between the G League earlier and resting for injury management following a left foot ailment that prematurely ended his collegiate career at the University of Oregon. He might be earning some playing time for the Nuggets during the restart. He's averaged 13.6 rebounds and 3 blocks in 3 scrimmages. The 2020-21 Rookie of the Year news isn't the only award information that has dropped regarding the restart, which is officially set to begin on Thursday. Per Shams Cardina of the Stadium and Athletic, the NBA annual awards will not include the 8 seeding games. Instead, they will be based off regular season contests that occurred up to March 11th when the league suspended play due to the coronavirus pandemic. However, statistics that accrue players during the 8 games will count towards their final year figures for the year. The top 8 teams in the Eastern Western Conference and the 6 teams within 6 games of the final player spot in either conference are taking part of the restart. Regular season games will occur through August 14th, with playoffs starting August 17th. The restart will obviously bring back Bobo, Andre Robertson, and a few other guys along the process. And that's all we got, so that's good news right there. But, so there you go. The NBA, baby, is back. And we thank you for tuning in to the GSMC Basketball Podcast here on the GSMC Podcast Network. Don't forget to follow us on social media. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review. I appreciate you letting me be a part of your day. And this is your host, Brice, signing out.
You've been listening to the Golden State Media Concepts Basketball Podcast, part of the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. You can find this show and others like it at www.gsmcpodcast.com. Download our podcast on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and Google Play. Just type in GSMC to find all the shows from the Golden State Media Concepts Podcast Network. From movies movies to music, from sports to entertainment, and even weird news. You can also follow us on Twitter and on Facebook. Thank you, and we hope you have enjoyed today's program.